Joe Biden had hinted in 2019 that he would be a one-term president. His job was to get Donald Trump out and then hand the baton off to,
who do you think it could be, if not Joe Biden?
Democrats going to pull Joe Biden out of the 2024 race in May.
Mr. Biden is not the Democratic nominee.
Biden should not run, and Harris would be worse for the country. So who's next in line?
Joe Biden and Dems committed elder abuse on Joe. Now they must force him to step aside. And there's a quote from within the article from the editorial board. Joe Biden knew, his aides knew. Heck, James Clyburn, the entire Democratic establishment knew, yet terrified that Bernie Sanders would win the nomination and then failed to take down their mortal enemy, Donald Trump. They propped up Biden like he was a Potemkin candidate, or more accurately, weakened at Bernie's, to try to capture some of the Obama nostalgia. It's time for those same Democrats who lied to get Biden into the White House to tell them that he must step aside before the 25th Amendment is invoked.
Now look at this headline. I'll read it for you. 3 scenarios to replace Joe Biden on the ballot. Any chance of them happening? That's a good question, isn't it? Joe Concha wrote it and he's with me now. All right, Joe, what are these 3 scenarios? And do you think any of them are likely to actually take place?
If the reason that Joe Biden is dropping out is because his poll numbers are terrible, he has no faith and confidence in the American people, I don't really see how putting Kamala Harris in that slot is going to remedy the situation. Someone who's also been dogged by incredible poll numbers. And if you really do believe that you're about to lose this election by putting forward a uniquely, historically weak candidate like Joe Biden, then yeah, I think it's worth having a conversation.
Something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing.
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad I let you speak. That's
your memory has gotten worse, Mr. President?
My memory is not good. My memory is fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't go with fine as the best description. Yeah, maybe that's why Jill usually jumps up to get him off stage.
Joe Biden had hinted in 2019 that he would be a one-term president. His job was to get Donald Trump out and then hand the baton off to, Kamala Harris, who's currently polling at 28% approval. But Jill Biden has been very
slightly
successful.
Less popular than wildfires.
It's like gas station sushi at this point. You know, it's about that kind of popularity. So she's not an option at this point. But Jill Biden has been very successful in terms of keeping him out of the spotlight.
I don't blame Jill Biden for being defensive of her husband. Totally. I think any woman would do the same thing and make sure that he is protected. She obviously knows what condition she's in. What I do blame her for is the fact that they are continuing this charade.
Well, right. And she's not just a spouse, right? She's not just, and she's the first lady, and she knows very well what she's dealing with. What we don't know is how long she has been leading him along and defending him and all that. And I get it. That's what spouses do. If someone left my husband out to dry, I would end them. And he knows that, and so do the people around him. But I'm not the first lady. And you can think about that in a warm way of like, oh, she's protecting her husband, until you consider in this book, quote, her dislike of Trump was a driving reason behind her support for him to run and for re-election. So she knows exactly not only who she's dealing with, who her staff is dealing with, but who the United States has in the White House. And she continues to let him do this, and then it sounds like blame others when he isn't up to the task.
Yeah, and she also has no love for the vice president.
If something does happen to Biden, there will be a bitter feud to be his replacement. She's not just like going away quietly.
I don't know why people say that. What about Kamala Harris has ever evinced to you like a shark-like appetite for political power? Like, what about how she has been operating?
Biden should not run, and Harris would be worse for the country. So who's next in line? Best chances of being elected this fall. Trump is a 5 to 6 shot. It's better than even. Biden 15 to 8, a little better than 2 to 1. Next in line, Michelle Obama 11 to 1.
Joe Biden will not be the nominee.
Joe Biden will not be the Democratic Party nominee.
Whoa. You're on record.
on record, people feel is not up to the job anymore, certainly not for the next 4 years. They cannot have him running in November, but they know they cannot go with this guy in this kind of condition.
Joe Biden will not be the nominee. I said this last year. People dismissed it as some type of conspiracy theory. Today, I think it became that much more obvious. Play this out. Biden's own DOJ and special counsel is effectively releasing a report that undermines the case for him to actually be a candidate for the U.S. presidency, right as Biden's poll numbers are cratering. But I do think what they're planning for is to sideline Biden as the nominee, trot in a different puppet instead. That's the most significant takeaway from tonight. But I think the reality is this. The managerial class in the Democratic Party, and I believe in the deep state, has decided that they have lost their use for Joe Biden as a puppet. I think they laid a trap for him. They invited him effectively to prove to the American people that he doesn't have the mental acuity to do it. He fell into their trap. And now they're laying the groundwork for in the coming 3 months to sideline him and actually put up who the real nominee is going to be. So I said this at the end of one of the Republican presidential debates, and I'll say it again. Just be honest with the American people. Tell us who the actual nominee is going to be so that we don't play these games and we can actually have an honest, open debate about who should be the next president of the United States. Because we know that Joe Biden is not going to be one of those candidates. And I think tonight made that much more clear.
Now look at this headline. I'll read it for you. 3 scenarios to replace Joe Biden on the ballot. Any chance of them happening? That's a good question, isn't it? Joe Concha wrote it and is with me now. All right, Joe, what are these 3 scenarios? And do you think any of them are likely to actually take place?
Well, Stu, I'll run them down and I'll give you my final answer on the second question. Scenario number 1 is the most common scenario among the political class, chattering class. At the Democratic National Convention in July, Joe Biden suddenly announces that he can't go forward with his re-election campaign. The reason is almost irrelevant. Needless to say, delegates on the convention floor magically are all in sync in nominating former First Lady Michelle Obama to be the nominee. Of course, this is the party that continues to insist to this day that they can only save democracy from Donald Trump, but they will have no problem in taking away the voters' rights in terms of deciding who the primary nominee is out of that particular process. And the media, of course, because a Michelle Obama candidacy is far, far more interesting than covering old Joe Biden, they will embrace this because the love affair with the Obamas never truly ended.
Everybody is talking about Joe Biden's too old to run. It's that conversation right there. Joe Biden's too old. And then the question turns to, well, who could do the job better than him? Everybody looks around at each other. And then the next question is, who could beat Trump? Everybody looks at their shoes, and nobody.
It's true.
And that's the thing. It's so interesting. David Ignatius wrote that column yesterday, and so everybody, stop. Everybody's like, this is horrible. It's horrible. It's what they were saying, but it's almost like that article, I personally think, did Joe Biden a favor. And I think that because it finally got it out there. Okay, this is what everybody's talking about. Okay, you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. Who you got? Who do you have to replace him? And there was a deafening silence yesterday.
Should he run again? I think that I think it's we'll take a look at it.
Do you want to see Joe Biden?
I don't want to answer that question because we have not. I don't want to answer that question.
Do you believe President Biden should run for a second term?
I have said if he runs, I'll support him.
I'm working on my own election, and that's all I'm focused on right now.
Everybody's worried about the elections. That's the problem. 2024.
No, but this is a simple question. Would you?
No. It's not. I'm not getting involved in that, John.
Too early to say. It doesn't serve the purpose of the Democratic Party. Ms. Maloney.
I don't believe he's running for re-election. Mr. President, I apologize. I want you to run. I happen to think you won't be running.
Always a family member who says, in my case, it's my brother, keep your eye on Michelle Obama. And I say, that is crazy. What should we be saying about Michelle Obama?
Well, here's what I know. Michelle Obama loves this country. She's a brilliant person and a brilliant communicator, but she was a conscript to politics. She never was interested in a political life. Even when Barack Obama was a young politician, she really didn't participate much in his campaigns. I was with him in his Senate campaign in 2004. I think she showed up twice in the whole campaign on election nights.
Now, will this happen? I say no, Stuart, because Michelle Obama is quite happy winning Emmy Awards for Netflix, living on her opulent estate on Martha's Vineyard, and she's never actually run anything in her life, right? At least Hillary Clinton had a resume when she ran for president. Michelle Obama's resume is being a lawyer decades ago. That's basically it. So I don't think she wants to step into this, and we don't know any of her policy positions anyway. So I don't see that happening.
So, she is not someone who likes politics. She doesn't like the tone and tenor of politics. And I would be floored if she would consent to that.
You ready for scenario number 2?
Yes, go for your life.
Okay. So scenario number 2 is that the same thing happens, but it happens with Gavin Newsom, right, where he is elected to be the nominee on the convention floor. Again, the voters don't decide. People at the convention decide because they see Joe Biden trailing Donald Trump in the way that he is at this point, and they say, no, we can't win with Joe Biden. He'll be 86 in the Oval Office in 2028. We want a younger, fresher face for the Democratic Party, and Gavin Newsom is our guy. But again, Gavin Newsom would then have to run on his record. His record is not anything that you could be proud of in California, right? Highest taxes in the country, highest poverty rate in the country, more people moving out of California to places like Florida than any other state in the country. So I just can't see that happening as well, Stu.
Number 3. Which is number 3?
Number 3. Yes. So number 3, I have forgotten, believe it or not. And now I have to look it up on my phone because what can I say? It was a long weekend, I guess. And I'm just trying to find it at this point.
Don't worry. It's on the screen.
Maybe we there it is. Thank God. Oh, yes. Kamala Harris will take the... Yeah, seriously, your producers are excellent. Thank you so much for that. Kamala Harris will take the presidential mantle. I see this as a non-starter, Stu, because she's somehow polling lower than Joe Biden is at this point. And when you see polls asking the question, can Kamala Harris be president right now as we speak, most say no, she's not ready for the job. So I just couldn't see. Normally, the natural procession is for the vice president to take over. We saw it with, obviously, Richard Nixon after Dwight Eisenhower, eventually anyway. Al Gore ran after Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush after Reagan. But here, it just doesn't seem to be something that is even something that's embraced by Democratic voters at this point, Stu.
Did you at any time think, like a lot of people did, that Joe Biden was going to come out and make some bold statement, maybe not to run for re-election?
I think that there was probably a discussion heading into it. And the reality is the Democratic Party has always had one obstacle stopping them from sidelining Joe Biden. That's what I call the Kamala Harris problem. They've tethered their identity to identity politics. Yet if they don't make her the nominee, it makes them very difficult to sideline Biden, which is what leads me to, I think, the likely conclusion that it is going to be someone like Michelle Obama who they do put up. So I think there are serious discussions likely underway. Pretty soon those are going to spill over into the public sphere. And I wouldn't have been shocked if that happened tonight, but I think the greater likelihood, Trace, is that they wait another couple of months and let this play out.
Then, all that being said, I don't understand why you're so skeptical that it could ever be the case that he'd drop out. Look, as the polls sour, I think it becomes more likely. Because at a certain point, Democrats have literally nothing to lose. Because the likelihood that they would actually win is so slim that going for a wild shot doesn't seem quite so wild.
I think that this is a chance for the Republican Party to now take that mantle. This man said he wanted to unite the country. He failed. He lacks the acuity to do it. I think in the Republican nominee, that'll be President Trump, we have an opportunity for someone with the acuity to say that we will unite this country. And I think that's how we're going to win this in a landslide.